Welcome to the Musical Mind. My name is Chris Cody. In my first video, I said something that might ruffle some feathers, and that was that gear will not make you a good producer or composer. As I mentioned, I'm not a big gear guy, and I don't mean that I don't appreciate good quality equipment and instruments. I certainly do. I just don't spend a lot of time looking at specs and bogging myself down comparing one piece of gear to another. I think that can really distract you away from working. And at the end of the day, I'm most interested in getting to work and making good music. The same thing goes for acquiring so much gear that it inhibits your ability to just get to work. Before I go on too far, I should say that I'm primarily speaking from the perspective of the personal home studio. If you're operating a professional studio, then gear and the amount of gear that you have is definitely a real consideration, especially from a financial and competitive standpoint, because people, potential clients, tend to pay attention to that stuff. But let's talk about small setups for our purposes. I'm a firm believer in that which gets you from point A to point B in the simplest, most uninhibited way. Point A being, here's my idea, here's my song. Point B being the recorded tracks. Too many times I've seen people accumulate tons of awesome gear, but when you look at their output, there's very little to show for it. On the other end of the spectrum, when I have friends who are constantly showing me new music they've recorded, these are the people with really simple, uncomplicated setups. For example, a small USB interface or a couple of mics, and a handful of plugins in their recording software. Whatever setup gets you to do the work is what you should be using in your day-to-day writing and recording routine. So it may not sound like the latest major label professional studio release, but the important thing is that you're working. The thing is, I've heard some pretty bad music recorded on the most super expensive gear, and that can't hold a candle to some of the amazing stuff I've heard that was recorded in a bedroom with an old 4-track tape recorder. Your focus should be on what you're recording, not what you're recording with. For another example, the success of so many of these electronic artists, one person working entirely in the box, and they can sell out a giant concert auditorium. Some people would say that lacks authenticity, and I would say that kind of thinking is really outdated, actually. But philosophical arguments aside, these artists who are unburdened by mountains of gear have more time to personally develop their craft and creative talents, and I believe their output is proportionately increased as a result. In a way, this kind of thinking flies in the face of conventional wisdom that espouses quality over quantity. If you believe what I say, then the quantity of your output outshines the quality of your equipment. Yet at the same time, I suppose it reinforces that thinking from a creativity versus technology standpoint. The quality of your work outshines the quantity of your pieces of equipment. Then again, maybe that old adage only applies when you're talking about one thing, not two separate things. But anyway, not to get off the subject too much, let's try an exercise. Make a recording of a song, your own song or a cover, and make yourself use what you think would be the absolute minimum amount of gear, software, plugins, and so on, that would get you to what you would consider to be satisfying results. And take note of any improvements to your productivity and think about whether the trade-off to minimizing gear and plugins frees you up in any way and allows you to focus more on ideas or gives you the ability to do more work. I'd be really curious to see what you find. I'm sure there'll be some who don't like working this way, of course, but hopefully some of you will find that you can indeed get more work done with fewer pieces of the puzzle to have to deal with, and not lose any motivation and interest because you have too much stuff you have to set up and tweak. Leave your findings in the comments. Post links to files on SoundCloud or whatever you use to share so that the rest of us can hear. Well, that's all I've got for now. I'd love to know your thoughts, so please like and subscribe, and thanks for tuning in. Take care.